Okay, welcome to tutorial 4. This one, it's a lot of ground to cover here. We're going to add buttons to our navigation controller, and we're going to show you how you can either put an image or text in the button. We're then going to add our Rootview Controller with a nib, another view, which is a table view. We're going to attach the class and the nib to the view. And then we're going to code, this is a big part here, code the array, or code for our array to the table view. We're going to use an array as a beginner step here to get you to understand how data works. The other types of data can be a plist or SQLite. I don't particularly care for a plist because it's confusing. In any event, okay, we're going to open up for our first part here. We're going to open our object viewer here. We're going to move down to the bottom here, and we want to put some buttons in here. So we're going to look for a bar button. We're going to drag one over and drop it. And then we're going to use a flexible space. And we're going to drag another bar button. And we're going to use another flexible space. You notice what happens there. It keeps pushing space, so it allows you. And we're going to do one here and one more, and finally a last button. Okay, we're going to select our first button. Sorry about that. Right click and put the word add in there. So that's our add button. Same thing here. Delete. Right. Okay. Over here. Settings. We're just going to name these in here, and info, or we'll call this about. Either way, well, actually no, we'll call it info. I'm confusing you here. By the way, this little hierarchy here, if you don't see it, it's probably closed, and you can open it if you're in. Wait a minute. If it's not open, there is a way to open it. It could be that it's like this, right? And so just double click or drag this to open it. You normally see this in your builder. So drag it to open it and you get your hierarchy. Okay. The bar button flexibles, we'll leave them as is. There's 3 of them. In any event, select a button here. You have options. The done here for the style means it's been clicked. We don't want that. It's either bordered, which you can have if you'd like, or plain. Plain has an interesting concept to it in that, and we're just going to type these in here as plain ones. Delete. Okay. Settings. You see them coming in at the bottom. They're quite big. Now, Apple says to make the word short and sweet. So probably settings over here would probably not be the thing you'd want to do. I'm just going to drag this over here for just a second. The other option is to use images. And I have some on my desktop here. Whoops. Okay. And this is sort of tricky. I want to close this window here. Okay. We're going to drag this one here. Just drag it to the supporting files folder, drop it, and do a finish. It's going to copy it. Do the same thing for the delete icon here. It's going to do a copy, do finish, information. We're going to run that one too. There's 4 icons we're going to copy over. And settings. Okay. File exists. Oh, okay. wait a minute. Information add. Let's try it again. File exists. Okay. Maybe it's in another part of the hierarchy here. Let's see. I don't see it here. I don't see it here. It's telling me the file exists. Alright. So, in any event, you now have these images available here when you drop down in the image drop down box. And you'll now notice that we're going to go to the delete one here, right? We're going to go to the info one here. And we're going to have to add another one. Let's see. It won't let me add the settings. I'm going to drop this one over here, this cog over here. Okay. For settings. For some reason, maybe that it either doesn't see it or doesn't want to see it. I know I had tested this out before, so it's possible I didn't delete the full path and it still sees it. In any event, okay. Here we go. And this is a lot better. If you run this, we're going to run it quickly here just to... I run it as Command S to save, Command R to run. You can run it from the run button you see here. Alright, and there we have them. If you click on these, nothing happens. They're not tied to anything. But we've created the buttons that we want. And then now what we're going to do, we're going to now do the second part of this, which is to add, under File, New File, we're going to add a UI View Controller subclass. And it's going to be a table view. You have an option here of either table view or just view. We're going to use a table view, and we want the nib. So we're going to add that in. We're going to save this as Rootview Controller. Okay. We're going to drag our nib. Oh, it's got all of them selected. Okay, select the nib, drag it to the views, and select each one of your classes and drag it to your classes here. Okay. I'm going to just move this in order. We need to do something here on this particular file. We need to put in some coding here to indicate we have a table view and table data source delegate. And this is saying that this particular class will be a table view and table source delegate type class. So what it really is saying is create the data or the methods, or allow methods to be accessible. The methods are already created. If you go in there, they're already here. We'll get back to that in just a minute. And then we're going to create here our first variable. It's an NS array variable. We're going to call this list data. Okay. Whoops. And sorry. There we go. The asterisk is always ahead of the name when it's an array, a string. Except for an integer, it's never that way. Okay. We're going to create the property as we did before. A little shaky here. What is this? Alright, property. It's non-atomic, which means we're going to allow the setters and getters what sets and gets the information from it to allow the computer to do that, or the software, I'm sorry, to do that. We're going to retain it in memory. And we're going to call it an an S array. Okay. I'm going to get a warning here, which says that we have no synthesize. Needs to be synthesized. So we're going to save it. We're going to come here. And when we go, whoops, let me go back again. I'm sorry. I didn't declare it properly. There it is. I'm sorry. Alright. Got to be careful with the keyboard there. Okay, so we go to synthesize, and there we go. Alright, very good. Okay, so we've now synthesized the list data array. The question is why? Why did we do that? We're going to go to the viewDidLoad method. There are methods out here that, for example, deallocate we've seen. When we deallocate this file, we want to deallocate anything from memory out of it. The viewDidLoad method here, we're going to add this line in. Alright. And IntelliSense will come up here. We're going to type in some names here. Now when you type in any kind of string, you always use the @ in Xcode. And I'm going to type in some of the, well, you know who they are. I forgot a quote there. At Bashful. Okay, we'll put some of them in there, and then we have to then close the braces on this. Okay, let's see if we can get we can get all 7 of them in. Let's see. All right, Sneezy, Happy, right? And Grumpy. Okay, so they're in there now. We're getting this little message here, and again, get another warning. You're going to see them. We have an unused variable here. Let's look at the variable we created here. We created an array variable. We said allocate space for it. Okay, and allocate the space for it, which means we're going to have to at some point release it and initialize it with these objects, and nil is always the last object you see here. So all of these objects it gets initialized with, and nil of course has to be at the end as part of the code. Then we're going to have another line here which says self list data equals array. Right? Now we're saying here the list data array that we created, set it equal to this array, and then we are going to release the array. Right? Okay. So we create this array, we allocate space with it, and we initialize the objects, and then we set the array that we initially created here in the Rootview controller. We declared it here, and then of course synthesized it here. Set it equal to the array here. Why did we do this? Why not just create the array from the get-go? Well, you really can't do that. I mean, you can create an array variable and fill it with something, but you can't do that from the get-go. You can't declare, and you can only declare a variable and then synthesize it. Then you fill it, in this case an array. So what you're really doing is you're saying, okay, I'm going to create an array in the did load method, which says, all right, create this array of these variables. When we load this controller, and then set them equal to the set self list data array, and then release the other array. Now I have it stored for the lifetime of this Rootview Controller class. Two things I have to do. One, I have to set the list data array equal to nothing, or nil, what's called nil, when it unloads. This is very, very important. When I unload, I want to have nothing there, but I also, when I deallocate, and I'm going to follow up this as well, I release it. Okay? And here I don't have to use the word self. It's interesting. To set it equal to something, I have to use self. Notice I did it here and I did it here. To release it, I just put it in the braces, call the release method. It's gone. Okay. One other thing here, you'll notice that there are two. These are our data source methods. We have a basic, what I would call a basic table view. We only have one section, an entire list up and down, one section. And so I don't have a sectioned table view, so I only need one section. I'm going to comment this out since we've put that in there, that code in there. The other one here that we need, right, is to set the number of rows in the cells. We're going to return the count, the number of pieces of information in this array, as the number of rows that we need. That's very convenient, and you're going to see that a lot. And then we come down to one more piece of information here, and this here is our self-arrow at index path. This method here, basically what it does is it says, okay, create a UI TableView cell method, a method variable called TableView, create a TableView method variable called TableView, and use the self-arrow at index path method on that, and then create an index path variable called index path. It seems confusing at this point, but the basics of this is it's creating cells, and it's using an index path so you know where those cells are located. Okay, we need a couple of methods here to get this thing rolling. We have to configure this cell to put the information in it. Right. To do that, I'm just going to go back. Can't always remember every single one of these methods, but I'm going to copy it right here. I should be able to remember them, but I'm not that good. Alright. First thing I'm going to do is create an NSUI integer variable called row and set it equal to the index path, which is here, and row. What does that allow us to do? Well, it allows us to use this variable as opposed to using the entire word index path dot row. I could have placed in here, I'm going to do it here for you, index path dot row, dot row. I could have done this every single time, and I do it sometimes when I code. But to cut down the coding, we can do it that way. Now, you notice I could have I could even have placed this in here. I'm going to do this just for a minute just to show you. You can bounce between... actually, you can't do that. I take that back. No. Oh, yes you can. Wait a minute. There we go. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can bounce between bracketed and dot code. Alright. Either one is acceptable. And I'll hold it there. Right? Either one is correct code. So rather than do all of that, we place row in here. Alright, we're almost finished here for this session. We could have had this here. Might work this way as well. I just want to see if it will. I'm not sure that it will, but we can try it. Yeah, it does. It actually does. Either way is acceptable. So you could have a dot form there, just to show you the different ways, or you can have the bracketed way. In any event, what we're saying here is, look, we want to have this integer called row. It's going to be the index path and the row method. What that means is the index path is going to look at the row and find out where it is in the list. Cell, let's say another one here. We have a cell variable that has a property called text label and text. So we want to set the text in the cell, what that cell is going to show us, equal to the list data array. Find the object at the particular index in question, which is the cell in question we're at, because we're looking at each cell one at a time. Find that object at index at the current row. We're basically saying, look, take the text of the cell and set it equal to the current object in that array. Right? That's it. It's very simple code. We're going to save that. One more thing we have to do to finish this off in our session right now is we have to click into the view here on our, or we can select the view, one or the other, it's up to you. And we have two things we have to code here. Notice here, the class is Rootview Controller. We want to have our Rootview Controller as the class. Remember, that's the class that's going to run our TableView. And then last but not least, there's one more thing. There's a nib name here. Typically, I've seen it selectable, but for some reason you can't. In many cases, you want you to type it in. We're going to type in Rootview Controller, and this is the name of our nib. It happens to be the same name as our class. And you notice now loaded from Rootview Controller, so it's loading it from this nib. Okay. So now, if everything goes the way we think it will, this should run properly. I'm hoping there'll be no errors. I've got it right. I've got the number of sections in the row, the number of rows, the items to fill that will fill the array, and the way the array will look, and there we go. There we go, and we have all 7 of our dwarves. Now if you select a row, nothing really happens here, okay? But we've loaded this in, right? I'm just going to close back out of here, go to our demo here, and we've basically loaded our first array into our first table. Now we can't do anything with this yet. These buttons aren't configured, and I want to just quickly close it for a second and go into one last item before I close out. I don't want to go too long here, but you notice here this method is our delegate method. It's the did select row at index path, and yes, that does what you think it does. When you select a row, it triggers this method to do something. We haven't done anything yet. We'll get to it. So that's it for now. I'm going to post this code at my website, and have a good night. Take care all.